the recording and turn it over to George. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you, Carly. So yeah, we had, let's see, I had talked to Greg at Lake Washington Tech a few months ago. Something I was trying to do this year was do some kind of a group library director kind of thing. And it seemed like everybody was interested in like the platform roadmap, accessibility and all that. So this is probably a better place to do that. And then also the Panorama platform has come up at different places. And so I invited Greg Padilla, who is our West Coast, West Region, Western United States Director of Software as a Service Innovation, to go through that and some of the things, kind of just introduce it, show you guys what it can do and that kind of stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to get going on the new UI. Oops, there we go. All right, so I've probably shown a number of you a preview of what the new user interface looks like. It's continuing to develop, and what I had the group pull together for me was just sort of make it a little simple as far as the roadmap as to what's rolling out the rest of this year. First things first is that the new UI is available. You can switch to it anytime that you want to, but nobody's going to force you into it. Let's say September, you're going to have your choice of when you're ready to move over to it, and then you can do that. When you do, you won't have to change any links in Canvas or anywhere else. Everything, this will just slide right in place of your current, what we call the classic interface. So the screenshot you'll see there is basically what it's going to look like. It's a little more, I guess, primo Google-ish looking, which for some people is something that might be a little bit difficult for them at first, but this was done through a number of years of development with students as to what they want it to look like and what they didn't like about the current interface. And commonly it was, we need more white space, less, stuff. Don't have all those facets on the left side. Don't make me have all these advanced search features if I don't want them, that kind of stuff. Make it easier and cleaner for me to get to where I need to go, and call out peer reviewed and things like that more clearly. So this is what you'll see. You guys can go into it yourself if you go to the website discovery.ebsco.com. From inside your network, it'll put you into your preview of the interface. Okay. So part of this is it's a modern layout. It supports WCAG 2.1 AA accessibility. It's responsive design. So if they're on their phone or their tablet, it'll automatically adjust itself. It's designed with a lot of things built into it that I'll get into, such as we can connect, through Okta or some other kind of SAML compliant for their personal user account management come into that. The advanced search is not defaulted open. People are asking for that. At this point, it's not an option to have that defaulted open, but that's not to say it won't be. You click the little advanced search below the search box and it will pop up, and it has a number of features built into it. There's also quick filters for pre-searching, links to the left for different research tools. There's a supplemental sources page where you can have lots of different links, and also have, I believe, up to 5 other links to other resources like Canvas or something else there. It has just above the search box where you can click to search whatever databases you want to search. So you, just like now where you can have different profiles defaulting different products on in the search, you can do it. That'll just happen just the same as it did before. But the student has the option to go up there and unselect or deselect things as well. Advanced search, when they click that, it brings it up. They can add additional Boolean fields. There's search options as far as date ranges and such. They're also actively collecting feedback to make changes to any of this kind of stuff. So there is, in your preview, there's a feedback tab that you could add in there. They already have some search options. They have thesaurus for the major databases. There is a thesaurus explode feature coming in April. Mesh headings will be in here by July. And then some of the specialty databases like RILM, ATLA, and such, APA, that's supposed to be complete by late summer, early October. So by late summer going into the fall, it's should be pretty much good to go. They're thinking most people will wait till next summer of 24 before they're fully ready to start making big switches. The results list page is different. You have your filters up top. So your main filters, full text online, peer reviewed, and a date are right at the top center. There is a button for all filters that you can click to get to everything else. Peer reviewed is called out. We can integrate library chat. We can integrate LibGuide content. We can also integrate unpaywall to bring in open access content if you just have a citation and no full text in your search results. And those are all easily done in the admin module. It's a matter of just clicking, I want to integrate my chat. This is my chat. Here's my, credentials, and it's done. And it's a live chat where it has that red X if it's offline, and have a green check if it's online, and a yellow if it's available but busy. On the results, you have direct links to get a citation, to add it to a project, which is the folders in the current thing. If you want to share it, either through email, share it to your Google Drive, share it to Microsoft OneDrive, or just straight to download the article, you could do that. The access options will take you to the full text, either PDF or the online viewer. And both of those will have later this year, and probably by, they say first quarter 23, so in the next month or two, where it'll read aloud the text for you. So PDF articles can have the article read aloud, again, to meet those accessibility needs. Detailed records are there. That's the librarian view, I call it. So you click on the title, you can get into the detailed record. The viewers for PDF, EPUB, and HTML basically all look the same in a sense. The tools are all to the right. Translate functions are built into it and such. Sharing and bookmarking. This is the one that everyone gets so excited about, is that when you're in an article, you can grab the URL off the top browser and that will work. It's now a durable URL. So that the student, if you ever had that where a student grabs the URL and copies and pastes into something, or a faculty member, and then it was under the old UI, it's session-based and it expires. In the new one, it doesn't. So it can be used over and over. If they take the URL from the results page, that'll work as well and reproduce those results. So that makes everyone happy and easier to deal with. Downloading and exporting, you can download and export multiple citations at once. They've expanded the formats. Citation management. Now, when you click on a citation, it does say it's APA 8th edition, MLA 9th edition. So they'll see exactly what it is. It shows you how it's going to format and copy and paste. So the sort of major milestones for this year is happening the rest of this year is to get the database specific limiters like for CINAHL and PsycInfo and things like that. Some of them will be done by July 23. The rest will be done by the end of summer. There's globalization, which maybe isn't such a big deal for all of us. Recommendations. This was something they were playing with where if the student's doing a lot of searches, they have to personalize. So they have to be able to log into their account. And they're doing a lot of searches for, let's say, Leonardo da Vinci. What'll happen is that the site would say, hey, there's some new articles that were released since you last were searching for Leonardo da Vinci. Are you interested? We can show you those. Journal alerts will be coming. The subject authorities, where mesh headings will come in July. So, other things as we go into the fall. The new reference centers, which is like Points of View Reference Center, Literary Reference Center, those ones will start to come on board later this year as well. And again, their goal is that customers will start migrating over July of 2024. And it's probably going to take 3, 4, 5 years before everybody migrates over and they start to say, those of you who are slacking, you need to move over. As far as accessibility, there is now VPATs are posted publicly at EBSCO.com. So if anybody is interested in those, I believe they're doing them every 6 to 8 months, just running them again. Updated accessibility statements are available there too. There's a website, I believe it's accessibility.ebsco.com, that you can go to and get anything like that. The audit for Classic and the new UI is there. The Real Speaker Read Aloud which is supposed to be released this first quarter. And everything currently is conforming to WCAG 2.1 AA, which is good for all. So there you go. That is the latest update. There's also on EBSCO Connect, in case you guys are interested. And I'm going to pull that up right now. I forgot to pull that up. You can go to this site here, where it's EBSCO Connect, which is the tech support pages. They have a platform roadmap that they're posting up every approximately 6 months. So they put it up in June. There was a November 22 update. And from what I understand, there's going to be one in probably April. So they will put a link up and a video explaining it and some slides, and are asking for feedback on anything that you want to see added, changed, or throw it all away. Whatever you want to say, let them know. So that's all I have for me. And now I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thank you, George. And let me see. I share my screen. So hello, everybody. Thanks for having us today. I'm going to be talking about our new analytics-based platform, Panorama. I'm going to do a short PowerPoint as an introduction to the platform itself and why we built it. And then we'll jump in and do some demoing of some of the dashboards. It won't be an exhaustive demo because there's a lot to show, but I'll highlight a few things, and of course, ask any questions at any point in time as we go through the session. So Panorama, we say it's insights through analytics. So when we, why did we talk about building this product? Well, really what we were hearing from libraries is that there's a need for analytics. So your analytic tools are basically in certain products you have today, and they're isolated to those products for the most part. And then other ways that you're gathering data and extracting it and manipulating it is through using Excel files and different tools like that. So we were hearing about those things, and we've been building software over time. So we've been in the software business for a bit of time. We're known for our content and aggregated database content specifically, and other services we provide, but we have been building software, and we really think that's the direction that libraries are looking for new tools. So that's what we've been doing. Also, we know libraries are interacting with new tools. So not only do you have a physical and electronic content that you're managing, but you're also managing additional service spaces, whether they are physical spaces in your libraries or electronic spaces or electronic resources like LibGuides or other tools that you're utilizing to help your end users, your students, your faculty, your staff, those types of folks. So we're trying to figure out different ways to bring that data together for engagement. And to help our own teams at EBSCO understand that this product was a good idea, is we did a journal survey, a library journal survey, to kind of get some feedback from the market, more exhaustive feedback. We did a lot of interviews with varying types of library deans, administration level folks, to talk about what they saw their needs were, as well as talking to electronic resource librarians and public service librarians and how they're gathering data. And these were some of the result sets that we got. We really were finding that it was lining up with why we were going to build this type of product. And really to try to, because what libraries are looking to do is show their value, justify their budget decisions. And we know that data-driven decisions are being made across your institution whether you're involved in them or not. And so the library really needs to be in that direction. You've all been doing that for years with your collections in general, right? So with your databases, you look at usage and determine if it's something you're going to keep next year, et cetera. So you've already been doing this, but we know that you're going to be doing this across additional services beyond just straight collection stuff. And so really the problem was, is there anything that can centralize this across all these different types of resources? And that's something that we were not seeing. So it's really, you're able to do all of your ILS stuff over here, but then for your counter-based reporting, maybe you couldn't, sometimes you could do it over here, but not always. And so you're kind of pulling your resources into different files and manipulating those files and trying to bring them together, but you're usually siloed in that sense in terms of how you look at those metrics and how you report off of those metrics. And so how are you going to justify the budget needs? You're really siloing how that works together. And so what we saw was a solution to be able to save your time. So instead of having to go out and harvest all this data from all these different sources, how can we put it into a centralized location? And how can we harvest that in some form as best we can, automate to do it in an automated fashion, as well as doing some pre-built dashboards to track trends. So the idea there is we can build some tools for you to be able to plug in your resources. Once we get that data flowing, we can represent it in a visual dashboard. And then also support some flexibility around streamlined reporting and improving the value, meaning that you can actually customize some of these dashboard views based on your needs from whether it be like a monthly reporting cycle that you might be doing across different types of data sources. If it's not in the pre-built dashboard, you can build an easy to use dashboard that you can pull different things like that in, as well as customize it to the data sources that you would like to provide within the product itself. We'll talk about that as we go through the process. So really it is about choice. It's really about centralizing that data into a single tool. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So when we're talking about, as I mentioned, you have your ILS data in one spot, and then you have your SpringShare data in another spot, and you're collecting all this other data in other ways. How can we bring this all together so you can report through a single tool, and then begin to think about how I can cross analyze these resources as appropriate. So the features are really a Panorama. It's to be a self-service platform for data discovery, meaning any librarian can log into it and look at the things they're looking to look at based on the data sources you're embedding in the product. We're providing those default dashboards, so we are building things with our customers for use by everybody. But then you also have the capability to customize any of those visual dashboards based on the data sources you're bringing in. So whatever data points are coming in, if you want to make a more simplified report that you're generating possibly every week, possibly every month, whatever it might be, whatever cycle that might be, you can do that without having to extract that data out of an existing default dashboard and then manipulate it outside the system. We look to automate as much as we can around data connections, and that could be through native APIs for existing systems. That could be working with report generators to script reports that can be sent to us so we can harvest that data out of an FTP folder, as an example. Customized data sources, meaning that we can again add the things that you would like to provide in that service. It's not a one-size-fits-all service. It's really what you would like to include, whether that be ILS authentication and counter-based reporting. That's great. Or maybe you want to add in SpringShare results or other data sources that are not typically in an analytic-based tool. As I mentioned, we automate data feeds in different ways, and there's ways to import data and export data through these different harvesting ways that we're doing things. The biggest piece of the platform is it's a hosted data lake and data warehouse. So we're bringing that data in, and it's multi-tenant. So the important thing about that we like to point out is, since it's multi-tenant, we are siloing, or we're walling off your data from other institutions. So you are the only seers of your data. And then from an EBSCO perspective, our data analysts that work with Panorama specifically would be able to get in there to see your data, start working with your data, make sure it's being harvested and coming into the system properly. But everybody else, like George and I, we have no access to any of that data, as an example. It can extend beyond non-library data sources. So we have some libraries that are integrating student information systems or looking at research-based systems to kind of bring in different data types for analytical needs, and to measure student outcome, potentially, those types of things. And again, completely optional. We understand some libraries do not want to do that. and some libraries do. So that's why we make those things optional in a sense, or that's why it's so customizable how we deliver the service itself. And then they're just dynamic dashboards when filtering capabilities, meaning that when you're in a given dashboard, as you put any filter, of course, it's going to rerun the report based on that filter. So if you're looking at what all your undergraduates circulated for a given area, it would go ahead and change that. It'll give you the mass data for everybody, and then it'll manipulate it on the fly as you look at those different types of things. And as we ingest different resources, that we generally can bring in, it's basically on the cycle that data can be collected. So when we talk about ILS data, we generally gather that daily. When we talk about counter-based reports, those are only delivered monthly. So those at most would be updated monthly. And then other tools, just depends on how often those things are being extracted. So we just kind of work with each library about best practices and how that moves forward with you specifically. And so just to kind of give you a brief overview. So these are a lot of different screenshots of different types of things. And so wanted to start with this before we go into the demo, just to kind of give you a sense of these are the different things that we built around, specifically around ILS-based data. We're looking at things like circulation, collection budgets, collection management, those types of things. And then measuring that against student outcomes. And we can talk a little bit about that if there's interest there. But then on the other side, we also look at other resources outside of kind of that typical trend of data that you normally look at. So things like authentication analytics, things like additional search analytics across discovery platforms as a potential around link resolvers, or how people are accessing behavior into your content, how they're getting there, what library tools are they using to get there, as an example. And then also, the ability to create new dashboards, again, whether that be you or working with us in some kind of professional service manner to be able to build new dashboards on that, or as you add new data sources, you'll get new dashboards available to you, or again, building custom dashboards that you might need with the data sources that are already coming in. So there's different ways to kind of look at data and how we bring data to get together at the end of the day.
Greg, can I say something?
Yes,
Let me say
please.
something real quick.
Yes.
You showed, go back one.
Yeah.
There was that library asset and premise usage. I know some of you guys are loaning out Chromebooks to certain students, and I had somebody talk about, wouldn't it be nice to have a dashboard that would bring in student outcomes like GPA for students that used Chromebooks or Wi-Fi hotspots? You could, with this product, you could correlate that kind of thing.
Yes, and we'll definitely show you kind of how we've done an initial correlation between access and student outcomes. Thanks, George. And so basically Panorama, what you get with the product is just, again, it's a data warehouse where we store your data. We're using a variety of different Amazon Web Service tools. We provide viewer and explorer licenses to get into that platform, because that viewer and explorer licenses, we're using Tableau as the front end delivery mechanism. So that's where all of the dashboards are going to be delivered to you. Viewer licenses have the ability to look at the data that's available. The explorer license allows on the library side to be able to create custom dashboards on their own if they would like to. Our standard offering is around 3 data sources connections, and that's how we price. And then we price based on FTE as well. And then you can include additional data sources. So that's all part of the process as we move forward. We provide default dashboards that we build that have been built by EBSCO and partner libraries. So it's been built with library input in terms of how they want to look at that data. But as I mentioned, you can customize those looks and feels on your end as well. All that includes onboarding and customer support from EBSCO, and then we provide additional professional services as appropriate or as you would like to do things moving forward. So that is just the quick overview that I wanted to highlight before we did the demo. So any questions before we go in?
Well, something I will say is that CTC link, since everybody's using that can be linked in through APIs to bring in all sorts of data out of there. Again, depending on what the state board, if they come on board with this sort of thing as to what they, you can choose what data comes through into the platform. So if there's demographic data, if there's intervention data, things like that can come through and be interlinked with library usage and such. It starts to become a more broader tool than just a library tool. You can, yes, bring in SpringShare, Canvas, all of these other kind of resources that they're already paying for, and now we can start to correlate with things.
Yes, thanks, George.
We have a question about
Yeah.
EBSCO.
Self-hosted.
Yeah, self-hosted versus OCLC hosting. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't. It's just a matter of extracting the file. So how we work with those is we've helped libraries write a script to pull the data out of EasyProxy, and then that is the script transfers it to an FTP server, and then we just grab it and implement it into the service. That's how we've been grabbing EasyProxy data to date.
And what these do is bring that. So we're looking at using a student, their unique identifier, like where are they going? What are they doing? And then you can bring in that, what's their major? What's their year? So you can start to see, what do nursing students go? Where do they use? Do they use ebooks? Do they use physical books? Which databases do they use the most? And you can really kind of granularly look at your collections and how they're getting used.
Yes, definitely. And we'll talk about some, I'll look at a couple different these dashboards to show you kind of how we're doing that. And then what's not on here that I'll go to is the student outcome as well, just to show you some cross collaboration of what we've done across different data sources. Oh. Oh, okay. This is fun.
Maybe you have to re-log in.
No, it was working 5 minutes before the session. They just all, oh, I know what
Oh, you know what it is? Yeah.
I know exactly what it is.
It's our Z-scaler.
Inopportune time for it to relaunch on me. Give me my apologies. 1 moment while I get it myself logged back in.
Some of you have seen me having to do that. Get out the cell phone, because then we got to put in your Okta code.
And the pressure of typing correctly has gotten me again. All right. I'm almost there, almost there. All right. And we're back. Okay, so just to quickly show, so just as a starting point, I'd like to show what we call library overview, just a way to give a nice overview of the different data coming. And this is basically mostly ILS-based data, but the idea here is we can, on this opening screen or this base report, is we can pull in different data source information into this area to give you guys a nice overview of what's going on within your library as a whole. So we have a couple different things, and they can launch you straight into any of these dashboards to dig into the details as you would see fit. So we see this as just a nice little tool to kind of give you a nice hierarchy or a nice overview of what's going on within the library across all your different types of tools that you're measuring around that specifically. What you're going to notice around, if you're not familiar with Tableau, we'll have some different filtering based on the different dashboards we're in. So right now, this one's just by date because we're doing a mix of things. So it'll change the dates that we look at here if I was to go ahead and make any changes and adjust all those dashboards here on the fly. And then once I launch into a dashboard, it'll go ahead and give me some more options based on some of those filters. Then I can use different things. I can download data out of different areas. I can share this in different ways, whether it's sharing the link or downloading a different, I can download like a PDF or some kind of image view as well if I wanted to get that and share it in some form. And then you can create different ways of creating alerts and subscribing to different dashboards, that kind of stuff. So there's lots of different things you can do within the tool itself. So with that said, I wanted to go ahead and start with some things that'll lead up to some of the national reporting stuff that we're doing, which is pretty interesting. But just to kind of start with e-resource usage to give you an idea of what that all looks like. This is based on harvesting your e-resource or your counter-based data out of a given tool like an Alma Analytics. We can harvest from through there. If people aren't using Alma Analytics for their e-resource counter-based data, then we provide a tool called usage consolidation where we can, again, where we can harvest and extract and show that data in different ways. And it's using the counter 5 based reporting metrics. So that's what you're going to see here. So as long as they're within your given service, we can bring that data through. And then what we're beginning to do is if we're harvesting this at a higher level or at multiple library level, you'll be able to look at all libraries combined as well as individual institutions going forward. So we're doing work with the SCEL Consortium in California, where we're going to be doing some of that work around that. We've done some work internationally to be able to do this. This is how it kind of started from an institutional level, working with a large consortia of over 200 sites, and they're going to have all sites are going to be under a single dashboard view. So they'll be able to see their own individual usage and do comparisons across institutions and things like that. So we're pretty excited about that capability as well. And then what you'll see from the reporting standpoint is we're pulling the counter 5 master report, then we're breaking it down based off of that master report. So your database views, your ebooks, your e-journals, and your platforms. Then you can do some comparison. So you get your raw metrics here based on usage itself, and then we can start breaking it down in different views. And these were all, again, all designed in collaboration with libraries and what they wanted to see. And so this would be one of those default dashboards that would be included with the service. And then from there, around the metrics that are coming in, you can actually design additional dashboards or more simplified dashboards or other ways that you might want to look at the data specifically. But I can do comparison metrics across unique item investigations versus total item investigations as an example. Or in this case, we're doing requests versus investigations as an example here. And then you can break it down by publisher and by title to see what your highest used resources are. We use this bubble chart, but then we break it down by total item request. But you can look at it again by the different metrics that are available through those counter-based reporting structures. And then what you'll see, and then we can alter dates. So in terms of harvesting data with counter, as much of the data that you have available, we can bring into the service. If you are starting anew, generally they'll have the last 2 years plus current, so we can go at least 2 years back. But if you have data that goes back further than 2 years, we can definitely load it in here and you'd have it visibly available to you. Of course, that if it's pre-2 or I guess pre-4 years ago, it's going to be counter 4. We have a crosswalk procedure so we can show the data in a counter 5 structure, even though it's counter 4 data, if that makes sense. So that's just one idea of what we do with kind of basic library or what I'll call standard library data specifically. And the other one I'll show quickly is around circulation details. So again, we can bring in we can bring in a variety of different types of ILS-based data. Again, just to kind of centralize into a single platform so you can report and do analysis across it in the same existing platform. So when you're looking at analysis, we can look at, your total circulation. And then we can start breaking it down by user groups and patron groups, material types, publication years, and then looking at things check out versus check in. So you're checking more items out than you're checking in, which is generally so people are holding on to items longer potentially. You can look at loans by publisher. So the NAs would be things that could be all kinds of different things that don't have a publisher attached. Could be chords it could be all kinds of different things you might be circulating to your users that don't have any kind of representation in terms of publisher, as an example. And then kind of just working through, you can see the different types of things. What I like to show in this one specifically, kind of what George was mentioning, we can actually break this down even further, whether that be by type of user or even by subject area, and we can even do things by major. So it depends on what metrics. So these even though we have this kind of built out this way, there's other metrics that we can bring in or other data points that we can bring in. So if you want to see, if you're able to assign a major to a user and for their circulation information, then we could say, the nursing majors are checking out this number of books, that kind of thing. But in this case, what we're looking at is the levels of users, so undergrads versus grads, postgrads, faculty, et cetera. So that's just different ways to look at the data as you would like to. So we can customize those types of views working with you if that's the thing that you would like to see in the product. And then circulation by subject. So we can get breaking things out in different ways to show how things are being done. And these tend to be more graphical, bringing in different ways to look at the data. We can always simplify those things through custom builds and things like that. So just depending on what we're looking to do with that given customer. So it's kind of like so that's really looking at kind of the standard, what we call standard library source data that we look at. Then we start looking at other ways that we can bring data across. So we talk about library assets, things like SpringShare. So when we work with SpringShare, we can work with, your libguides, your database A to Z. We're starting to work with the Q&A or the lib answers and working with their calendar and doing different things like that. So we can start looking at different areas of metrics around those. So looking at your FAQs, your cumulative hits based on all the data coming in versus those within the current time frame that you're looking at. So if I can change those dates and look at those types of things, how many databases you have, how many guides you have available, when those were last updated versus when they were created in terms of your A to Z database lists, things like that. So there's different ways to kind of, and for SpringShare specific stuff, we're using our APIs to bring all this data across. So this is updating daily, is my understanding. So different ways to kind of present that data and look at it within that. And then also what we're doing is doing some combination of data sources. So can bring in different things in terms of how people are what events they're attending, whether they're online or in person, number of hours the events are, number of attendees, and number of hours of desk activities. So not only just events you might be doing, but also capturing those reference interviews or those information desk transactions, I guess, is a different thing that we're also looking to do as people are using different sources. And we're onboarding more sources based on what you're using. So if you're using some kind of desk tracker tool or different types of industry types of tools out there, as we get new libraries on board, we work with those libraries to onboard those types of sources. So it's one thing I didn't mention during the PowerPoint presentation, it's a vendor neutral tool. So anything that's out there, we look to try to bring in based on libraries who would like to see that data within our structure. So it's not specific to EBSCO tools or only certain types of tools. We are really looking to expand it based on what libraries would like to do down the road. So interlibrary loan, so another common area to be doing some analysis. Excuse me. Oh, that's right. So I'm going to show a screenshot of this just because our data on our demo site is a little bit had broken the connection. But anyway, so the idea here is you can start looking at all your data from an ILS perspective. So the things that you're borrowing versus what you're lending, getting some of those metrics where that stuff is being borrowed or lent to, borrowing. And the reason why I wanted to show the dashboard specifically, because it kind of gives you all the detailed metrics behind it. So request by library type, average turnaround times for physical loans and copies. So our demo site doesn't always get as much care as our customer sites do. So I know our customer sites are working fine. So we'll get that corrected when I talk to them later. And then look at some other things around that. Just so even looking at discovery session analytics. So kind of how people are interacting with your discovery layer, how they're getting access to different areas. Anywhere from just looking at straight sessions versus duration per session. So how long they're in the product, anytime they're getting 0 results. Just looking at different areas. So kind of giving you a kind of a sense for how people are using the product. And you in working in libraries over time, I'm sure you all have a very good idea of how they're using it. But sometimes this will give you a nice little measure, or it could even show you some additional trends that maybe you need to kind of go in the back end and do some updating on things or kind of look at how things are going. But also looking at link out URLs to make sure that people are getting out to the right resources. Is your easy proxy attached properly, those types of things. And then some other discovery search types of metrics as well. So we're looking to kind of build these types of tools in to help people see what's going on within their search environments overall. And then last thing I'm going to hit is authentication tools, and then we'll start talking about some what we're doing around national reporting, which is some of the newer things we're doing. But around authentication, one great thing that we're getting out of Easy Proxy is that all that transactional data that you can get from an Easy Proxy harvest of their logs. So the amount of times are, basically how it's being, amount of times they're being searched versus when they're being delivered to a TOC, whether they're being delivered to an article, abstract, et cetera. So you kind of get in the sense for how that all works, and it'll break it down by the provider as well, whether that be the publisher or the platform that you're providing access to. So you can get a sense for Science Direct, they're being, majority of the time they're being directed to the article. So that's good. So from whatever product they're searching in, they're going straight to the article. So you know that your linking is working pretty well, in my opinion, my personal opinion. But that different types of things. And also what you'll see is kind of some number of sessions versus user trends. Normally you wouldn't see this drastically of a drop off. So this would be interesting if that did happen, but you can get a sense for what's going on. You normally time of year, if you're in session, those types of things. That's when you'll start seeing some variations of this type of thing. But basically, for most of our customers, for Easy Proxy, I think they do a harvest once a month. So, but anyways, point being is you can see some natural trends very easily just by looking at the visual itself, and then you can start digging into the detail of why this might be happening or trying to figure out what's going on, if that was the case. Then also you'll get a sense for geographically, we built this little map to see where people are accessing. So if you're seeing big blue dots in areas you wouldn't expect, there's potential that there's been some fraudulent activity. Someone's credentials got stolen or something like that. Which you may just be able to notice before it gets reported, as an example. But so just different tooling, different ways to look at data specifically that you might not see from the natural log itself. And then what we're also doing is trying to, because we're harvesting these data sources into a single platform, we're able to help with reporting from a national perspective. So most libraries are reporting through iPads and or ACRL in some form. Once we start harvesting data from these different platforms, we can actually start answering those questions. So what we've done so far the last couple of years is we've looked at the reporting questionnaire, and we've built out how to pull that data from the given data sources we have. So expenses from your library collections, we're pulling that data through. Your library physical collection, pulling that data through, again, from the ILS, electronic resource data, so coming from your knowledge base, potentially from your ILS structure. Again, circulation data, your electronic usage data, so your counter-based data, specifically interlibrary loan. So if we're connected to your interlibrary loan system, we can start bringing that data across. And then the gate count. So if you're using some kind of gate count software, we're able to bring that data in. So we can pre-populate all this data for you to be able to extract or put into those questionnaires without you having to go gather it from these disparate areas or having to run reports, different types of reports out of your ILS. It'll all just be here as we pulled into the system from your existing sourced, your existing data sources. And so so that's one area. And then from an iPad's perspective, we're doing the same thing based on those data sources coming in. This isn't attached to all the data sources like it should be, but the idea here is the same idea. Every year, we're going to be looking at if they redo the questions or they change the questions, we'll make sure that is appropriate. And then we'll store the previous year's data in here as well. So you'll see the previous year's report based on that report or how the questionnaire was structured. Then you'll see all your data represented in here. There'll be certain data that may never be represented based on the data sources that you don't want to ever include into this service, or you just don't have included. So overall, what we've found from the libraries that are participating so far, we're covering about 75% of their data collection for these reporting needs. So there's about 25% of data they have to go and collect themselves because of those, either they don't have the data source connected or they don't want to connect the data source. So there's various reasons of why. But we do find that definitely from the ILS and interlibrary loan perspective, we have those two data sources collected, we can populate a lot of the data on their behalf. And then eventually what we're hoping to be able to do, or one of the visions, is to be able to provide even like a print option or a populate option, so we can populate a questionnaire or a form that you can just hit the button, populates the various data fields for you, and then you can send it along to the association that you're reporting to. And then the last thing I wanted to show, which I didn't put in my favorites, was around that student outcomes, just to kind of highlight how we're bringing together different data sources specifically. So as George was mentioning, there's different ways to measure student outcomes. It could be based on GPA, it could be based on time to graduation, time to transfer, whatever metrics you are looking to do or looking to measure across your institution. There's different ways of doing it. And how we did it with this student outcomes based data is we did it by GPA, so at the major level. And then one thing that we always make sure that we let folks know is we aggregate that data across a given program so that to protect an individual user. However, if you have, and this could be on any of our dashboards, whether maybe you have a program that has one faculty, maybe you don't show that in this view, or if you have 4 students that are part of a program, there's different ways that we can eliminate that from a public view and or just not include it, so that you can isolate these to individuals specifically. So protecting an individual is important. So PII is important to us and how it's being done, and we want to work collaboratively with the library how best to do this type of thing. So just to kind of look at what we're doing here is we're able to look at, so they pulled GPA out of their Banner system at the major level. And then what we did is we had a connection between that as well as data from the ILS, so specifically loans and renewals. And then we also looked at the Easy Proxy sessions. So we looked at the Easy Proxy data for sessions, average loan or average session length, and then average loan length, renewals and loans specifically. So what you're going to see here when we're looking at loans in spring of 2020, at the height of the pandemic, or the beginning of the pandemic, I guess, you're seeing that, yeah, there's not a whole lot of circulation going on, which we know. But what we did see were a whole lot of activity through your electronic resource access, through your Easy Proxy systems generally, right? So, and what this essentially is showing us is based on GPA and the usage of resources, as the more people are using your resources, the more likely they're gonna stay at that high GPA level, versus less interaction just means they're going to have a more variance number, more variance in success at the institution. So this helps, validate what you're all doing in terms of what resources you're providing, and that is generally supporting your library users and how they effectively work at the institution itself. And then when we go ahead and look back, let's go back to winter of 20 and look at, we don't have great data for that one for sessions, but if you look at the circulation, we're seeing the same type of thing. So variance based on checking out materials versus those who do. Then you can see outliers as well. So you have someone that's checking out a lot of books, but has a 0 GPA. Very interesting. So either they're checking out books not in their major, or they just not really interacting in a standard way of educational process. But anyways, there's different ways to kind of do that. So that's one way that we're merging kinds of different types of dashboards together to do analysis. And I'll show one more in terms of how that works as well. So when we look at, so this is kind of the where we see kind of the rule of the strength of the product. Not only can we report on a single data source and kind of the basic data that you'd be looking for, but we can also do cross analysis. So this is based on looking at link resolution versus counter access and how that's being measured. So we can combine different sources. So this is why this is all kind of in proof of concept based on library need. And so we look to the imagination of the library and what they want to be able to see and measure, and how they want to represent that, and how they want to do analysis across it. So this was a case where a library wanted to look at 3 different tools that they currently use and how people are using those tools to get access to resources. So for the journal Nature, here's all the counter investigations that we're seeing versus the links from SFX, their link resolver. And then also they started using the third iron product for link resolution as well. So they're beginning to transition. So they're seeing how often people are using that SFX versus that third iron. Where they populate that, I don't know, but so they would know all that information specifically. But just this will give them a sense for how that's all interacting together, and how their tooling is working across these different sources. So that was a quick run through of some of the different things that we're doing. Are there additional questions? Other things you might want to see from a standard reporting structure that I didn't cover or show? Something that seems interesting or not so much?
It's all very interesting and, very exciting to see the data start to come together in a way that, librarians try to communicate to decision makers outside the building. But, I think one of the things that many of our institutions struggle with already is that it's so much like for the size of their staffs and everything else.
Right.
And so for us, I'm just wondering how like consortial level type like configuration and setup could be managed to take the burden off of individual institutions while still giving them access to the visualizations. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, that does. That's a great question. So I think as one I mentioned, so that there's a consortium here in California, SCELC. If you're not familiar, it's basically a lot of private institutions, and we're working with them on a project. It's really kind of the first designed for consortial level data, and so we're working with them. We're working with another group, Mobius in Missouri, that's going to be working on some of this consortial level data for Panorama as well. So the idea there is we can actually hook in to a consortial level instance of an ILS, or bringing in data from multiple libraries for counter-based data as an example. So even if they're not stored, if there's a ability to pull that reporting at the consortial level, then we can pull that in and be able to manipulate it so that you can see a consortial level view versus individual library views on that data. So that's really the work we're doing right now at the consortial level to help support libraries in different ways. And the other thing that we're doing is also we're extracting all of the iPad data and pulling it into the system. So we're going to have I think back to 2017 for iPads data. And so what SCELC and Mobius and those other groups are looking to do is be able to pull in or be able to isolate that data to their group of libraries and then be able to do some, peer-to-peer analysis, or be able to provide their institutions a way to kind of view themselves individually as well as view themselves against their peer, who they consider their peer institutions, as an example. So there is a lot of consortial level stuff being built to date. And the other idea here is around what I was talking about in terms of we're really looking to harvest that data in an automated fashion as much as possible. So there is a lot of the work is during implementation to be able to kind of figure out how do we hook into your systems to bring the data through. And once we get that data flow coming, it's basically hands off from your perspective, unless something breaks, which if we see a break, then we would have to communicate with the library or the consortial level person that we're working with and figure out where that break is and just get it corrected. So there should be minimal interaction from that standpoint in time once we have those connections made, or the pre-built reporting that we needed, whatever it needs to be. As I mentioned, what we've built is scripting for Easy Proxy. We built some scripting around some Alma-based reporting, as well as using some of the Alma APIs to be able to get data directly out. So there's different ways that we're interacting with these different services. SpringShare, we're using the API specifically to bring data in, as an example. And then some other sourced data, gate count systems, we're using some reporting modules to, again, script some reports that can run automatically, that can can basically send them to an FTP server that we can grab the data from. So trying to get the work off of the library, a specific librarian or library staff, to have to go and download reports and upload them somewhere and then configure them. We're trying to eliminate that. We're looking to eliminate that, as close to 100% as possible, I guess is what I'm getting to.
So most of the Washington institutions do have Alma Primo, but I think the second most common, and it's only a handful, but have you worked at all with the Koha ILS?
We have just begun working with the Koha ILS, yes.
I think we've got 3, if anyone can correct me on that, but I think there's 3 of our colleges that are working on that one. And I think one of the things that the state could be swayed by is the vendor neutrality, because we do have a few different ILSs. Not all of our institutions use LibGuide. Some are, having their own web services manage it. So, and our different authentication methods. I know a lot of folks are easy proxy, but yeah. Anyway, does anyone, there was a comment about student privacy. I find it it is interesting, like you mentioned, customizing to be able to remove visualizations that would perhaps identify a student in quote unquote anonymized data if there's only one person. But yeah, I did not have to do a lot of student privacy questioning when I was in my former job. But if anyone has any other questions about privacy concerns, I'd be curious, what may have come to mind while you were watching the demo or hearing about this. And if anyone needs to go, we will continue recording and it will be available. So feel free to bounce out if you have an 11 o'clock thing.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for if anybody's going to speak up or not, which is fine. One thing so how we're dealing with privacy, student privacy or personal identified information is it can be handled in a couple different ways. We have some institutions that are doing their own stripping of data on their end and then delivering it to us. We have tools within Amazon Web Services and the tooling that we have to be able to analyze that data, and then we can adjust and do some scrubbing of the data as well to make sure that we have it at a broad enough level. Then as I mentioned, then we can really customize it if we find that, there's a handful of users in one given area that doesn't make any sense, to be able to visually show it, and we can just basically exclude it from being visually viewable and not really, but it's still being stored in the back end, so that way all your data is in one space. Then we have we're compliant with all the different standards, and we can definitely share our privacy statement and everything else that we do. That's part of our license agreement. If that's that would always be part of the conversation we realize. So if there was at any point in time, if there's direction to move forward in any form, or you just want to be able to review that, we're happy to share that information with you as well.
Well, I believe too, with because CTC Link is a PeopleSoft software, so they'll have APIs, and within the states, like IT people, they can set the APIs to not transmit certain data fields. So it can send over an identifier, like a student ID number or something, and then whatever else they want to send, but not name, address, phone numbers, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would be very curious to see what our actual data link people would think about this. They have made it fairly clear that they're not interested in customizing anything for our libraries, and that is down to the institution level. It would be fascinating, but a potential future direction
Yeah, and it depends on, what's in there. So I know I had a discussion with somebody who was on this call about the VPs of instruction, that they would probably be very interested in some of this data. And I'm sure lots of data is in CTC Link that they would want to see correlated with other stuff. So it could be pushed from that end, that they want this kind of a tool.
Yeah, well, and the state board director of educational services and innovation, who he's kind of the guy that is, like rolling out things like the Canvas to everybody. Like, he's in charge of looking at that kind of technology decisions. Like, I'm sure that it would be interesting to them to see how student usage of new services that they have, or student usage of like Canvas,
Pressbooks, for one.
whatever it is, because we did just get the Pressbooks membership for the whole state, like all that kind of stuff. But good to have the librarians on board before we try and make a pitch higher. But we shall see. I'm not seeing any chats come in. Does anyone? Yeah.
Sorry, this is Melinda. So I just want to clarify kind of what I was meaning by that. We, a few years back, pre-COVID, had tried to correlate our, had wanted to try and correlate our laptop checkouts to GPA, for example. And it actually became a really internally, like within the library between our two campuses, a huge kind of morality deal because of identifiable data in terms of, okay, we're tracking what students are checking out individually, right? And that fundamentally is like, oh, okay, is that really, it's not what we do. We scrub our data, when they turn their stuff back in. So we're not looking at their history. They can't see what they checked out previously, that kind of thing. And it's like, that kind of student privacy and, that libraries have as the institution, versus our need for data and our need to convey our usefulness, right? And so there was this really large balance, and I know that questions, at least I know on my campus, would come up are like things like, who has access to this data, what's the level of detail that they're conveying in terms of like what they're searching and that kind of thing. When it comes back to things like subpoenas and stuff like that, in terms of what and who has access to the data at that point, and does that open our students up to any kind of problem. And what we ended up having to do, like, they did a study and it was a great study, and they ended up not being able to use it because they could not opt out. Students were not able to opt out of it. It was kind of an automated thing. And so there was no like informed consent from the standpoint of a study or anything else. So anyway, it's just that's kind of the context I'm coming from here when I know if I want to try and talk about this with my institution, questions that would end up coming up.
This is Howard. So Carly, just so you know, that the chair of ETAG, which is what you were talking about, the EdTech group that does all the purchasing, the group that purchases Canvas and Panopto and does all those contracts, the chair of the group is part of LLC and is actually on the call today. So that would be one thing, and actually meets with the tech people at the state board, and actually throughout the state. There's only about 10 of us. And that group's been consistent since its founding. So, so we're very well plugged into that group and have regular conversations with that group. So that's,
and I had just talked to Michael Brown.
Yes. So Leslie and I have been with that group for 5 years, and I'm actually chair of the group, and it's a
awesome.
Term. So I can give you back. We can talk offline about that because there's
great. Yeah.
Probably some fundamental disconnects. A lot of schools actually don't scrub their data, certainly within the CTC system. And we were actually starting a pilot up until a few years ago that did require students to tap in and select which class they were getting services for. And things kind of fell apart with CTC Link as we're rebuilding Tableau and hardware and software. So that all got derailed. But we had done a pilot and had one of our instructional supports already doing that. It is supported within the institution. And certainly it's institution by institution, whether they scrub data or not just in Washington, but certainly across the country. So that's, as George know, I'm a big fan of this application, and yeah, well done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and as I mentioned, Melinda, we definitely have all the information we're happy to share. So at the institutional level, if they have concerns, we have our product managers who can speak to the details of everything that we do. Essentially, we just need one piece of data to make connections, so we don't have to have everything. So it just depends on what your institution considers PII. I mean, is the student ID represented by itself identifiable or not? Some say yes, some say no. So it really, it becomes opinion or understanding from a given institution what they're willing to discount or count as PII is the way I think about it. But anyways, but thanks. It's a great conversation to have because it does come up on literally every call, and it's important to know. So.
Yeah, and with this, the licensing at a site, there's one what you call Explorer license where somebody can go in and create their own dashboards and kind of look in at details. And then there's 3 viewers that can just view the dashboards that are already made. So that's the maximum extent, unless you're going to take dashboards and put them on websites. But you can allow 4 people in an institution, 3 to view, 1 that can be like the master that can go in and create dashboards and view dashboards.
Yeah, this is so, it would, I think, be a very new direction for my role to be involved in any of this. So it's a great conversation that this demo has started, and I thank you both, George and Greg, for being here today. We are 10 after, and I want to respect folks' time. So if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up and stop recording.